All right. Hi, Laura.
Hi, hello.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. Glad to have you. Um, our audience here in Los Angeles and everywhere else, this is Laura Rhys, and she is a master sommelier living in England and representing the wine that we're tasting tonight. And I'm real excited to learn all about your beautiful product and your life and your involvement in the winery.
Sure. Great. Well, hello, good evening to everyone, and thanks so much for having me here, Ian, this evening. Yes, my name's Laura, and I'm Global Ambassador for Gusbourne. We are an English sparkling wine producer based in Kent.
Beautiful. And tonight we're tasting the 2014 Blanc to Blanc. And I've been able to learn a little bit about the product over the past few years. It seems like, the world is really starting to embrace this. What type of success are you finding with Gusbourne?
Well, actually, it's been great the last few years. It's been wonderful to see, not just in the UK, but internationally now, especially in the US, also very much so in Scandinavia. And further afield, we've got some great interest in the wines, which is lovely. It's really nice to see Gusbourne, of course, but also English wine as a whole, really developing as a category and something that people are taking seriously as a really great alternative, I suppose, for quality traditional method sparkling wine.
Well, with your perspective, what do you think was the tipping point for English wine? When did it become feasible, practical, and was it global warming? Was it new varietals, species, or a combination of both? What was it that made English wine possible?
I think you can probably trace it back to the late 80s and early 90s. When one or two very brave people decided to plant Chardonnay and Pinot Noir instead of the more Germanic varietals that we had been planting previously. And that really, I think, started this wave of styles of production that we see now. And then I think for probably the first 15 years afterwards, perhaps people, generally speaking, I think were a little bit cautious about the fact that England could produce wine. We are very famous for umbrellas rather than vineyards, perhaps. And so in that sense, I think people didn't expect England to be able to produce wine. But, in the last 50 years or so, for good or for bad, our average temperature has risen by about 2 degrees Celsius. And that's quite a marked shift, really. And that, as well as I think people's skill in choosing the right vineyard sites, has allowed the industry to flourish, which has been great. And then it took another few years for people to catch on to the quality and the styles of the wines which were being produced. So I think it's... I would say probably in the last 5 to 10 years, you start to see that tipping point in terms of people being very excited about the wines. But you can trace it back to sort of 30 years of preparation for that.
Sure. And when was Gusbourne born?
We were 2004. Andrew Weber, who is our founder, he planted the first vines in Appledore, which is the little village in Kent, just about 6 miles inland from the coast.
Very good. And was it always thought to be, sparkling first, or was it still wine first, and then these make better sparklings?
No, it was sparkling first. So Andrew, his daughter, funnily enough, lived in Appledore, and he would come down and visit her and walk around the fields of Gusbourne Estate, and at the time it was arable land, really. And he saw the potential for vine growing there, decided that he would plant some vines, literally started with a few hectares, the next year added a few hectares, the next year, after buying the estate. And the view was always very much to make world-class sparkling wines. We have planted a lot of Burgundy clones as well as Champagne clones. And out of that, and I think the discovery that some of our vines really, or some parts of our vineyard can get amazing ripeness, that's when we started to experiment a little bit with still wine. So it was sparkling first, and then still came a little bit later, and it remains really probably less than 5% of our production. So we're very much focused on sparkling.
Very good. And your technology there, what type of things have you incorporated into Gusbourne to create that style? How manual are you versus automated? And are there any particular strategic advantages that you guys have created?
I think in terms of advantages, I think our vineyards are a massive advantage for us. We are right in the southeastern corner of the UK, so very much in the warmest, pretty much driest part of the UK. And that extra warmth and less rain is very beneficial for us in terms of ripening good quality grapes. We also have a very special microclimate where we are, really, and that, along with our clay soils, rather than perhaps the more famous chalk soils that you might think about, really lends that richness of style that you get and that you would see in the Blanc 2014 as well. Our proximity to the coast and our maritime climate, in a sense, is also great. It helps to keep the grapes healthy. We have this rolling sea breeze rolling through the vineyards all the time. So we have a lot less issues with rot, for example. We also have less issues with frost too. So we find ourselves in our vineyard very much in a little microclimate. And so for us, it all starts in the vineyard. The most important thing is growing great quality grapes that then move to the winery, and then we can produce this beautiful wine, which I hope you'll enjoy. So in terms of technology, I think we don't do anything particularly special in that sense. We focus very much on hand picking the grapes. They'll go in to be pressed. We have a German pneumatic press which presses very gently, so we get the gentlest pressing juice. And then we'll ferment mostly in stainless steel, a little bit in oak as well, but probably only 5 to 7% would ever find itself into a sparkling wine blend. And then we tend to use malolactic fermentation most years. And then that takes us up to Christmas pretty much, where in January we'll start our blending process. We'll have this year something upwards of 200 different base wines to blend into our wines from all the different blocks around the vineyards. And then then blending happens, then second fermentation, of course, and then we really like to focus on extended lees aging. So for us, it's really important to have, generally speaking, at least 3 years aging on the lees. But for the Blanc de Blanc, it tends to edge closer to maybe 42 months.
Quite an investment. And are you you're out obviously representing the brand worldwide in the normal conditions, so you're probably zooming all over the planet these days.
Yeah, I was zooming with Russia earlier.
Wow.
And then obviously yourself today, and I'll be zooming with a couple of people tomorrow too. So it's not quite the same jet hopping lifestyle. It's a Zoom hopping lifestyle now. The comfort of my dining room.
so much more efficient though, right?
Yes, in a way, but it's a great shame not to see people face to face. I did a lovely Zoom tasting yesterday in Norway. Well, not in Norway, obviously, from my dining table, but they were all in Norway. And it was lovely to see everybody, and it was really nice to interact, but it would have been so much nicer to have seen people face to face. So hopefully we'll get back to that soon.
Yes, ma'am. So just to go a little deeper on some curiosity of mine. Um, so years ago, we read about how they discovered or realized that this chalky plain that is in Champagne extends all the way to Kent, England. Uh, is that something that motivated you to seek out sparkling wines as a producer? Did you is this something that you mentioned that the grapes are not only benefiting from that, but the clay, and maybe you can just divulge a little bit more on that side of the equation.
Yeah, of course. There's a really interesting map which I can find for you and send over. Maybe you
Okay,
can show it
sure.
on the
Yeah.
screen, which shows the makeup of soil around the UK and around the southeast especially. And what happens is you have, of course, the iconic White Cliffs of Dover, which are probably, gosh, 15 miles away from us. They're really not very far at all. So of course that's chalk. But very quickly as it runs inland, it narrows and then runs up, goes around London and comes back out and really fills out towards Hampshire, Sussex, east and west Sussex. And that's really where you'll find the bulk of the chalk soil. And much of Kent is actually clay. So it's something that people don't often think about when they think about English vineyards. That we often talk very much about chalk. But what's interesting is, yes, our first vineyards were planted on clay in Kent, but our second site is in Sussex. And we own all of our vineyards, so we have full control over them. We can start to see what's happening. But the Sussex site has more chalk. And what's interesting is to see the grapes from both sites, which generally speaking have fairly similar climates otherwise, but they're different styles because of the soil. It's really quite striking, and it's interesting to see. So for us, to start with, the clay soil added a real benefit because it increases the heat absorption in a sense, and it helps, at least for us, to create a little bit more weight and a bit more intensity in the grapes grown in Kent. What we find in Sussex, conversely, is there's perhaps a little bit more there's more freshness for sure, but there's also a little bit more of a taut kind of character sometimes coming through from the grapes. So it's nice to have both of those that we can now blend to really create a bit more complexity and an extra dimension into the wines, really. So what I think, when Andrew first planted those first vineyards in Kent, he was looking at the exposure, and he was looking at the soil and at the general climatic influences that we had in the vineyard. You can stand at the top of Boot Hill, look down and see wind turbines on Romney Marsh, which is essentially the English Channel. So there's pretty much nothing between us and the coast. And I think Andrew sort of looked at this, these fields essentially, and the estate, and I don't know if he thought, oh, it's not chalk, I wonder if we can do it. I think he thought, having sought a fair amount of advice beforehand, I think the general consensus was that those clay soils would work really well. So it's nice that we've got both now.
So is that clay kind of a gray clay, or is it a red clay?
No, it's it's more red. It's I can send you over another photograph of our vineyards, and you can see it's kind of a browny reddy clay. It's quite dense, so in a sense it has the potential to be quite water retentive.
Yes.
Which of course in a wet year can be quite problematic. We're lucky that we don't have a huge amount of rain where we are, so it can be quite subject to compacting. We work a lot in the vineyard to minimise that and to aerate the soils and to get as much lift, I suppose, in the soils without compacting too much. But I think the real advantage for the clay soil is the fact that it's heat retentive. So it does help to ripen the grapes a bit more as well.
Great. Well, we're excited to be able to taste the wine, and we thank you for making time for us. And we
You're
just,
very welcome.
this moment has created some unique opportunities for us as educators to reach people and connect internationally. And
Yeah.
it's fun to get to hear a little bit about your perspective. What other wines are you tasting, in the near future? You got anything fun coming up in your wine life?
My personal wine life
Yeah,
or Gusbourne
your
wine
personal wine life,
life?
because you got to balance everything, right?
You do, yeah, you do. Yes, I suppose I have some fun bottles in my cellar. We're great fans of Syrah, especially Northern Rhone Syrah, and we've got a fun few bottles of Nebbiolo, which we've got our eye on as the weather starts to turn cooler and a little bit more autumnal. And there's always room for the odd bottle of Burgundy, red and whites. Just
Mm-hmm.
the odd one, though, And so that's probably where the next few weeks will lie in terms of our consumption, I would think.
All right. All right. Well, we've had quite a vintage out here in California. Is everything gone okay with your vintage in 2020?
Yeah, it has. Actually, it's been a great vintage. We harvested over about a 2-week period at the beginning of October. And the fruit came in, it was really, really lovely quality fruit. I've been tasting the ferments as they've been completing, and the beginnings of these base wines look really interesting. There was quite a nice ripeness to it. And as we've started to taste the wines, we're starting to see quite wide-ranging flavour profiles coming out throughout the different base wines. So it should be an interesting blending session in January, I think.
Very, very good. I've heard that the Champagne region has had an amazing 2020 as well.
Right.
I don't think in California we're going to be hyping our 2020 vintage all that well. We've had fires and all kinds of issues here.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear that you survived this vintage well, and we'll have something to share going forward. We hope that you'll come and visit us in Los Angeles, and we can touch glasses and be able to learn more. But we thank you for your kindness in giving us a moment this morning, and we'll definitely try to ambassadorize our audience tonight into learning more about the great wines of England. And certainly Gusbourne is one of the leaders in the category. So we're real excited to do this, and we thank you and your team's cooperation in helping us.
Oh, well, thank you to you as well. It was a pleasure to talk to you today and to chat to you a little bit. I really hope that you enjoy the Blanc de Blanc, and I also hope that once travel resumes, we might see you in our vineyards in Kent as well. It would be lovely to see you here. But wishing you all the very best, and I hope everyone stays safe, and we will see you soon.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, Ian. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.